In the glass towers of the financial district, success is often measured by the sharpness of a suit or the prestige of a degree. But for Logan Barrett, success was measured in the 3 crackers he arranged in a perfect triangle in his daughter's lunchbox every morning. Logan was 31, a man in a gray technical jacket with scuffed work shoes and a quiet stubbornness. To the 1,400 employees at Nexora Systems, he was just the senior maintenance technician, the invisible man who fixed the cooling vents and checked the server racks while the real power players held strategy sessions on the floors above him. Nobody asked him for his opinion in meetings. Nobody saved him a seat at the table. He was background noise in a building full of loud ambitions. But Logan had a secret buried under that gray jacket, and it was heavier than anyone around him could have imagined. 3 years ago, Logan wasn't a technician. He wasn't background noise. He was Nexora's principal systems architect, the quiet genius who had designed the Nexora Grid from the very first line of code, who had spent sleepless nights hand-building the thermal sync module that kept the world's most vital data flowing without interruption. He was the kind of man that companies build legends around, the kind of man whose name gets whispered in boardrooms with a mixture of admiration and envy. And then his wife died. And when the architecture of a man's heart collapses, everything else follows. Logan didn't want the 2 in the morning strategy calls anymore. He didn't want the executive pressure or the performance reviews or the quarterly projections. He wanted to be present. He wanted to be the father his 6-year-old daughter, Grace, needed him to be. The kind of father who was actually there, not just technically alive in the same house. So he did something that shocked every person who knew him. He requested a demotion. He chose a smaller paycheck, a quieter hallway, and a role that let him leave at a decent hour and read his daughter a bedtime story without his phone buzzing on the nightstand. He was content being just a technician. He liked that nobody asked him for product positioning decks. He fixed things, went home, and made Grace laugh before she fell asleep. That was enough. That was everything. For 3 years, it stayed that way. Logan moved through the building like a ghost. Present, capable, and completely overlooked. He knew every pipe, every server rack, every hidden fault in the system that the documentation had never properly recorded. He knew which nodes ran hot in summer and which cooling pathways had a delayed response. He knew things about that building the way a man knows his own home. Not because he read about it, but because he built it with his own hands. Then Evelyn arrived. She was the new CEO, precise, brilliant, and determined to make her mark. She came in with fresh eyes and a mandate to modernize, which is a word that organizations often use when they mean something more uncomfortable. She didn't yet have a map of the human architecture inside her own building. She didn't know the history living inside the walls. And because she didn't know, she had to trust the people who told her they did. The person she trusted most was Dominic, her coup. Dominic was the kind of man who wore authority like an expensive watch, always visible, always making sure you noticed it. He had a talent for making complex things sound simple, and for making simple people sound unnecessary. He presented Evelyn with a 42-page slide deck, polished and confident, arguing that the entire maintenance team should be replaced by credentialed experts with degrees from MIT and resumes that included stints at Google. The slide deck was full of numbers and logic in the kind of language that sounds like progress. The ripple effect spread across time zones, across industries, across systems that millions of people depended on without ever knowing it. Evelyn stood in the server room watching her $200,000 a year experts staring at red error screens with the particular stillness of people who have run out of answers. The room was very quiet for a long moment. Then Carter looked at his phone. He scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in years. He looked at the name for a few seconds and then he made the call. Because he knew, regardless of titles, regardless of org charts, regardless of everything that had happened over the past 9 days, there was only one person who truly understood the invisible plumbing of the grid. There was only one person who had ever really understood it. Logan arrived at 2:38 in the morning, stepping out of a taxi in a plain t-shirt. He had left Grace with a neighbor he trusted, kissed her on the forehead while she slept, and come back to the building he had been walked out of less than 2 weeks before. He didn't call ahead to negotiate terms. He didn't ask what was in it for him. He just came. When he walked into the server room, the room went silent in a different way than it had been silent before. Evelyn looked at this man, this maintenance technician in a plain shirt who had been handed a white envelope and quietly packed a cardboard box, and she heard Carter say the words that reordered everything she thought she understood about her own company. He designed the system. He trained us all. Logan didn't respond to that. He didn't look at Evelyn with any particular expression. He sat down at the terminal, cracked his knuckles once, and began to type. For the next hour, Logan worked in a language that belonged entirely to him: manual reinitialization, thermal state memory. A response sequence built from years of intimate knowledge of how this particular system breathed and strained and recovered. He spoke quietly when he needed to direct the others, and they listened with the full attention of people who understand that they are in the presence of something they cannot replicate. The experts who had replaced him stood at his shoulder and handed him what he asked for and said nothing that wasn't useful. At 3:44 in the morning, the grid blinked back to life. The hum returned, the screens cleared, numbers began flowing in the right directions again. Somewhere in 47 companies across the world, systems resumed, and people who would never know his name continued their lives without interruption. Logan leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he stood up. In the quiet restoration of the server room, Evelyn sat across from him. The expensive slide decks and the optimization strategies and the 42 pages of credentials felt very far away. She told him what she had come to understand, that she had been given a bad map of her own company, that the person she had authorized to be removed was the person the entire system had been built around. She offered him the role of Chief Infrastructure Officer, reporting directly to her with full resources and full authority. Logan looked at the clock on the wall. It was 6:12 in the morning. He didn't think about the title. He didn't think about the salary or the prestige or what it would mean to have his name on an office door again. He thought about a 6-year-old girl with her mother's eyes who was going to wake up in a few hours expecting her father to be there, expecting the particular kind of pancakes that only he made the right way, expecting the morning to feel the way mornings were supposed to feel. He told Evelyn he needed to take Grace to school. He told her he would give her an answer tomorrow. And then Logan Barrett walked out of that building, not as a hero, not as a legend, but as a father. He had saved the company in the quiet hours of the night. He had done what no credential or resume could have done, but he understood in the way that only people who have lost something irreplaceable can understand that the most important thing he would ever build was not a data grid. It was the life he shared with his daughter. The triangle of crackers in the lunchbox. The bedtime story. The good pancakes on a school morning. The world had stopped watching him, and he had used that invisibility to become something better than what the world was looking for. Never judge a person's worth by their title or the scuffs on their shoes. Never assume that the person moving quietly through the background has nothing to offer. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the one everyone has decided to stop watching. Sometimes the person carrying a cardboard box out the door is carrying the whole company with them, and nobody realizes it until the lights go out. Look closer, listen better. The people who build the things that hold the world together are not always the ones standing in front of the room. Sometimes they're the ones going home to read a bedtime story. If this story moved you in any way, please take a moment right now to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story about the quiet strength in ordinary people. And drop a comment below. We want to know, has there ever been a moment in your life when your true worth was finally seen? Tell us your story.